Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 10th of September. How did it get to be September already? And I hope that all of you have felt the sort of beginnings of the chill of autumn outside, particularly as the weather has turned slightly colder for all of us, I think. Well, I hope you're all safe and well wherever you are in the world. We're broadcasting live here in the UK at 5 p.m. UK time, hoping and still trying to work out the best timings to allow people from different ends of the earth, from Australia as well as from the west coast of America, to be able to join in. So do keep your thoughts coming in on the timings of whether we go for sort of 4 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. UK time, which either of those help you at either end of the time spectrum to be able to join us. And so it's a great pleasure to have this chance to talk to you and discuss with you about the ancient world, as we always do. And you've been sending in, as always, you've been sending in some absolutely fantastic questions. Hi, Alexis. Hi, Judith. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in. I hope you are all well. But before we kick off on your new questions for this week, it is, of course, also a prize week. So, as many of you know, what we do every month or so that we are doing the Q&As, we look back over the questions that I've been able to answer with you live, and we look back and we decide on the best question, what we think is the best question from that bunch, which wins a prize. Hello, Anna. Hello, Francesca. Hello, everyone. Hello, Anna Cannon. Thank you. Hello, James. Nice to see you. Hello, Debbie. Brilliant. So the questions have been brilliant, obviously, as they always are, but I think the winner for this past month goes to Catherine Nancy's 10-year-old nephew for the question, in ancient Rome, did they have pets? So well done, Catherine Nancy's 10-year-old nephew, who I don't think we actually know the direct name of, but you win a prize. So please do get in touch through the Facebook page, facebook.com/ProfMichaelScott, or direct over email, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, and we will get your prize out on its way to you, which I suspect will be a copy of my Life in Ancient Greece book, which hopefully will be of interest to you, and indeed also flagging now that I've started work on a new venture, which you may have seen posted on my website recently, michaelscottweb.com, which is a book for BBC Books, which is going to be the visual story of the ancient world, the wide ancient world. So we are in the thick of creating at the moment, and we hope to have it out to you in the next year or so. So this is a very exciting new project, and it's great fun, and you're going to love the amazing stuff that the team are doing that I'm working with as editor. So this is all great. So Catherine Nancy's 10-year-old nephew, congratulations. There's a book coming your way once you get in touch. And then on to kind of some of the fantastic new questions that you've been sending in. So, Anne Yin asked, which culture in general do you find more interesting, the Greeks or the Romans now? I mean, we should have a poll about this on the Facebook page, I think. Greeks or Romans, standoff. Which side do you stand on? You have to choose a side. You can't be for both. You have to pick a side. Now, I often do this in open days at the University of Warwick, and sort of stand there in front of this group of students and sort of lambast the Romans as being kind of absolutely useless compared to the amazing Greeks. Well done, Alexis. The Greeks, it's all about the Greeks. They often look back at me slightly confused, and because they're often have just had more exposure, I guess, to the Romans and learned more about the Romans than they have about the Greeks. But there's still time to save them when they come to study with us at Warwick and to convert them over to the Greeks. Oh, Tuffy, says Rebecca. Annie, you're for the Romans. Dawn's for the Greeks. This could be tight. This could be very tight. We'll run a poll on the Facebook page over the following week. Corinna says 4 p.m. better for you. Thank you very much indeed for your feedback. That's brilliant. Thank you so much though for tuning in, even today that we're a bit later. What made you decide to choose Greece? Asked Maria. Well, it is an interesting one. I ended up being more interested in the Greeks simply because I was more interested in their language. I gave up Latin pre-GCSE. Didn't like it. Didn't gel with it at all, but I was introduced to some letters of the ancient Greek alphabet when I was 13, 14, and something just absolutely clicked, and I have always marvelled at the magic and wonder of the language ever since, and that got me into the history and the art and archaeology, which have also been kind of my absolute faves. So that's kind of where I would come down, the Greeks versus Romans. But it's not just about the Greeks and the Romans. Remember, there's all those different amazing ancient cultures out there as well. What about how do you compare the Greeks and the Romans to the Han Chinese or to the Chinchas, or to some of the great Mauryan Empire of India, or to the Guptas of India, or to the Parthians, or the Achaemenids, or the Persians, or the Sassanids, or all of these great and wonderful cultures that we could be comparing, or of course the ancient Egyptians as well, who could forget them. So kind of there's lots more cultures out there that we need to be bringing into the mix a little bit, and remembering it is not just the Greeks and Romans. At least you're back, yes, and you're on time. Thank you very much indeed. Dawn, you're doing Latin at the moment, the OU, and loving it. I'm very glad, and that I'm sure, no doubt, is due to you, but also to the fantastic teaching you're receiving from the OU. So, and so kind of great culture. Why do I find them more interesting? I think the Greeks I find more interesting, not just because I like them and intoxicated by the language, but I think because of the sheer variety. The idea that within the Greek world there isn't just one way of doing things. There's over 1,000 different city-states with 1,000 different ways of doing things, and that tapestry-like quality of the Greek world with the individual, regional, micro-regional differences is something that I find continually fascinating. So thank you, Anne, for your question. Amy Lagalbo has come in and asked, how did people with physical disabilities get around in classical times? She's been doing a bit of reading on the subject and has also come across and shared, and we'll share it on the Facebook page as well, a recent post from Pompeii and from the archaeological site of Pompeii, and the lengths they had to go to make the site accessible to wheelchair users, particularly thinking in the picture that Amy has shared is wheelchair users trying to cross the streets of Pompeii, which, if you remember, are sunk down, and then there are stepping stones across the street. And of course, they've had to be filled in to allow wheelchairs to be able to move across the street. So what happened with physical disability? This, Amy, is an absolutely fascinating topic that is really only just coming on our agenda right now. We have for a long time sort of bought into the lie of looking at ancient sculpture, which shows in the mainstream people all perfectly proportioned and muscular without any kind of real physical disability. Now, I say most sculpture because actually if we look at vase painting, for instance, coming from the ancient Greek world, one of the main characters that you see on vase painting, if you're looking at the gods, is the god Hephaestus. And the god Hephaestus, the guy who kind of puts together the thunderbolts for Zeus and creates all the wonderful armour that can't be destroyed, etc., is in many of the literary sources, and indeed in his visual descriptions and portrayals on vase painting, portrayed as disabled, as lame. And this is a topic that we're really only beginning to think about and understand from two perspectives. One is that there is, in the visual culture of the ancient Greek world, i.e. in the surviving statuary and in the vase paintings, and indeed in the literary descriptions and the visual images they create, a lot more disability than we first thought there was. But secondly, we're also understanding it from the perspective of actually what the lived experience of the real person was like in the ancient Greek world. And as we get to know more about actually what their daily lives were like, we begin to realise that disability must actually have been a very regular occurrence in the ancient Greek world, not just from the point of view of disabilities that people could be born with, but actually disabilities that they gather as they go through life. And that could be because of particular dietary problems or particular diseases that we know that were rife at the time, or indeed the fact that they are engaging in a very heavily physical life and could often easily do themselves injury and thus have a disability as a result of that. And of course they're at war a lot of the time as well, and so there must be people walking around and partaking in society with wounds that have left them with some kind of disability. And then of course we're beginning to factor in and think about mental disability as well, kind of within the ancient world, and how we can understand that through the surviving sources. So we're actually having to imagine a world in which some would argue the majority of people walking around, say, in an ancient Greek city of a certain age would actually have some kind of disability as well. So this is a whole new picture of the ancient world that is emerging. Now, there's been some discussion here on the page about languages. Yes, this is an odd one, particularly with archaeology, particularly if you want to engage with Mediterranean scholarship, that, yes, of course, lots is in English, and now indeed even the text, the Latin and Greek texts, are nearly all great, and this is a good thing, available in translation as well. But it is a transnational community of scholars that are working on this topic. And if you want to work on the Greeks and Romans, then actually, yes, being able to read in French, German, Italian, modern Greek as well as English, certainly at kind of academic research level, is an important part of your job. And particularly within archaeology, because archaeological sites are given out to and dispersed to different European nations to be responsible for excavation and then publication of the finds. And as a result, if you want to work on Delphi, for instance, which I worked on a lot, that's dug and excavated by the French, and the majority of the material is thus published in French. Olympia by the Germans, for instance. And so it goes on with a number of different archaeological sites. So if you want to work across different archaeological sites, you also need to be able to engage with the excavation publications, which will be in their respective languages. So there is a lot of work behind the scenes to have not just your ancient languages, but your modern languages up to scratch to really take things to the cutting edge, if you like, of the academic research level. So Amy, thank you so much indeed for your question. Such an important aspect of the ancient world that we're only just getting to grips with. Kula Sikiadis has also got in touch asking to shed some light on what sort of meals ancient people ate. You'd love to recreate one. Well, Kula, are you going to invite us around to join in your ancient supper? I hope so very much, or at least post some pictures of your ancient supper that you create to the Facebook page so that we can share them with the Facebook page and with the community group as well and get everyone's taste buds salivating. The stuff that I would suggest, well, thinking with my Greek hat on for a moment, I'm thinking, you need to be very, very careful about what type of fish you serve. Now, obviously, the main diet, we think, of the Greeks would actually be non-meat, some fish, absolutely, but non-meat and mainly cereals, olive oil, crops. Meat would be reserved specifically, normally for big religious sacrifices where large number of animals were being sacrificed to the gods. The non-edible parts of the animals would be wrapped up, the bones, etc., would be wrapped up in fat and burnt to the gods because the gods were said to like those bits. And then all the edible meat bits of the animals would be cooked on a giant barbecue and distributed to all the participants of the religious festival. With the result that Aristophanes, the great kind of comedic poet, says that the main after effect of a religious festival in ancient Greece was indigestion. Now, because people were just not used to eating that amount of meat all in one go. So, but fish. You think fish is, for a culture like Greece surrounded by the sea would be an absolute staple. It is. But you have to be careful, particularly if you live in democratic Athens, because the Athenians believed that what kind of fish you ate said something about your politics. And if you ate a particular kind of fish, you were inherently anti-democratic. And if you ate another kind of fish, then you were one of us Democrats. So be very careful when you go to the fish market. And you can, in fact, there are some surviving ancient texts that talk about the particular associations of particular kinds of fishes. So you can make sure that you are not going down the wrong train. Dawn's talking about the Last Supper in Pompeii exhibition. Absolutely amazing, wasn't it? To see some of the carbonized loaves, the bread, the different materials, the different sorts of things that they would be eating and growing for themselves. Absolutely brilliant. On the Roman side, of course, stuffed dormice, another absolute classic. And one of the things from the Pompeii exhibition, which I remember vividly, Dawn, I don't know if you remember this as well, was the terracotta contraption that was created expressly to keep your dormice in and keep them healthy and running around. So the inside of this large terracotta jar had sort of running tracks around the inside of the terracotta for the dormice to be able to run up and down the inside of the pot. Of course, there was a lid on the top, so they couldn't get out. But they could get lots of exercise, they could run around happily in the pot. It had air holes in places where the dormice couldn't get out. Then kind of when you were ready to stuff your dormouse, you reached in and you took one and then made stuffed dormice. So there we go, Kula. If you do make a stuffed dormouse, please don't invite me to join you for that supper. I'll leave that one be. Thank you very much indeed. Sure, and you remember the dormouse pot. Excellent job. Excellent. Yes, indeed. It was absolutely brilliant. I'll find a photo of it that I took at the exhibition and I'll share it through with the Facebook page and Twitter and Instagram afterwards. Kula has also asked, one of Kula's favourite things to do is to get your hair done in ancient Greek style. This, I think, is brilliant. You took some pictures of figurines and statues, and you take them into the hairdressers and say, "Can I have this, please?" But you need a good write-up. You need some real kind of DIY instructions for how to do the knidian style of the Hellenistic period. Is there anywhere that you can find this information? So if anyone out there happens to have some do-it-yourself instructions for the knidian style haircut for a woman of the Hellenistic period, then please do share on the Facebook page, and we can all go about doing our hairstyle in that way. Now, I think mine might be a little short, but there are, of course, some excellent kind of wigs. We can get some good kind of wood contraptions over my head to be able to sustain the hair going up. I'm thinking about in the Roman world, the Flavian haircut. The Flavian haircut was absolutely enormous, sort of going over the top of my head. And I've recently been reading and working on outside the Mediterranean world in Pazyryk and the Ukok Plateau, where China, Russia, Mongolia, Uzbekistan all kind of meet. There on the Ukok Plateau, they found a whole series of Kurgan burials dating back to the 5th and the 4th centuries BCE of the Pazyryk culture. This is a nomadic pastoralist culture, that were part of the steppe, and they found buried deep in the frozen ice of this Kurgan, they found back in the 1990s the Ice Maiden, the so-called Princess of Altai. Ukok Plateau is in the Altai Mountains, and she was frozen ice, but when they de-thawed her, they found that her coffin was a long coffin, and 2/3 of it was her, and 1/3 of it was her headdress. Absolutely brilliant. An absolutely enormous headdress with its own internal scaffolding. And this would be brilliant. Yes, you're quite right. Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones, absolutely brilliant writer on ancient Greek and Roman fashion, and particularly also on hairstyles. Aphrodite's Taught Us, I think his book was called. So that's definitely the one to look out for if you want some instructions. I have noticed, and in fact, I'm giving a talk on the 15th of October. We'll be talking about this in a little while. On the 15th of October for Classics for All. And we're going to be doing it on Roman DIY, thinking about the explosion of DIY that's happened since lockdown. Everyone's got into home improvements. We're going to be thinking about DIY in the Roman world, in the home and in the garden, and did they have any of their own DIY disasters or DIY successes? Can we sympathise with the Romans over 2,000 years or so? So we are going to be looking a little bit at this. And when you Google Roman DIY, there I was thinking, I'll just kind of start to get some thoughts together with a quick Google search, as one does. What does it come up with? YouTube videos of how to do your hair in Roman hairstyles. I didn't even know these existed, but absolutely brilliant that they're out there. So there are definitely some handy guides ready for you. Yes, Phil, talking about Thurston's and Iliad Book 2, absolutely. And of course, going through the Iliad and that very early books of the Iliad, you get one of the famous descriptions of Hephaestus as well as being lame and as being something doing things that and moving around in such a manner that actually the gods start laughing at him. So it's a really kind of interesting indication of how sometimes disability seems to have been understood and reacted to within the ancient world, but which is not paralleled other times, which is considered to be absolutely normal and certainly not a laughing matter in any way. Thanks for that, Phil. Great. So Kula, thanks very much for your question. Do get in touch with your favourite hairstyle. If you have a favourite hairstyle from the past, let us know, and we could perhaps have a week where we all come to the live Q&A with a hairstyle of choice from the ancient world. There's an offering. Alia Soliman, who's a lecturer in classical studies, has asked about teaching Sophocles Antigone. Are there any contemporary adaptations of Sophocles Antigone that you would recommend? Again, I'm throwing this out to you. Are there any contemporary adaptations of Sophocles Antigone that you would recommend to watch to really engage a student audience? If there are, again, please share them on the Facebook page. I'm trying to think of some of the more recent productions that we could look to that would be kind of more perhaps lively and engaged. I'm thinking also about whether there have been any films done, particularly thinking from Greek directors. I'm going to give that one some more thought, Alia, and we will come back to it. But anyone who's got some ideas for Sophocles Antigone, please share. I do believe there is a YouTube clip of a certain person reading an excerpt from Sophocles Antigone in the recent months, which you might find useful, but the quality is so. We're going to have to take a quick break to talk about some of the what's-ons and other things that are going on. So you will have seen on the Facebook page we shared the new Gods of Olympus exhibition, photographic exhibition that's been put together by Ana Martinez and stylist Mario Ville Kataka. Absolutely fantastic stuff, so please go and have a look at that. Monkeys have been found buried in 2,000-year-old Egyptian pet cemetery. We'll be sharing this, be absolutely brilliant. Sarah Scotty, there's an adaptation of Sophocles Antigone based on South African island that Mandela was imprisoned on. That's absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. Great that you have got that. If you've got a link, could you share that with us through the Facebook page or via michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, Sarah, and we will get it out there on the page. Roman Villa has given up, it's released its secrets underneath Borough football pitch, absolutely brilliant. And also, did you see the stuff about the Roman site they've been excavating this season underneath Bamborough Castle? I was up near Bamborough Castle just the other couple of weeks ago, and I didn't see these Roman sites. I am so gutted. I've got to go back there right now to see the Roman site that they've uncovered underneath Bamborough Castle in Northumberland. Brilliant. What about the cache of sealed coffins in Saqqara, Egypt, that have come out? There's a huge 13 intact sealed coffins have been unearthed in Saqqara, which is the big Egyptian burial ground that was actually in use for a much, much longer period of time than the plateau at Giza was, where the Great Pyramid is, one of the famous pyramids are. But actually before that, and indeed after the Great Pyramids of Giza were built, the Egyptian pharaohs and other communities went back to using Saqqara as their preferred burial site. So more stuff coming out of the ground. Then there's a podcast from the Getty that you might be interested in on the legacies of Pliny the Elder and Younger, which has been done by Daisy Dunn. Absolutely brilliant. Who's doing a Medusa hairstyle? If I do that and you all turn to stone, or if you do that and I turn to stone, then things aren't going to work out very well, are they? And of course, James, the Brest new Roman site is at Corby. Yes, indeed. And we're waiting for that good exhibition to open up as well. Hopefully there will be an online component to the exhibition and museum or collection of artifacts, so we can all get in there and enjoy it as well. A couple of events coming up to flag with you. So I already talked about the 15th of October when I'll be doing a lecture, online lecture for Classics for All on Roman DIY. So we'll be broadcasting the links to be able to join in that lecture in the next couple of weeks. But before that, indeed on the 15th of September, I will be doing an online discussion with Nina Ramirez at the Gloucester History Festival. So we are going to be recording this as a discussion next Monday on the 14th in the evening, but it won't be available for you to view then. It will go live for you to be able to view the next day on the 15th of September. So keep a lookout for that on the 15th of September. And we are going to be chatting, Nina and I, about ancient explorers. So look out for that indeed. Okay, we've got a little bit of time for a few more questions. Now we tackled that one, but we didn't get to Tracy Rabiotti. It's great to see so many new names and faces coming up with questions this week. Thank you so much indeed for engaging with the Q&A, and do spread the word to everyone. Keep the questions coming in from as many people as possible, because they really are the lifeblood of this Q&A, and it's absolutely fantastic to hear all your thoughts. Now, Tracy has been asked me about the road not travelled. What would I be doing if I wasn't doing what I was doing? Now, this is a really interesting and great question. And I want to throw this out to you. What would you all be doing if you weren't doing what you were doing? What would have been your alternative what if path, career, lifestyle, place to live in the world? What would it be? What would be that kind of road not travelled that perhaps at some point when you look back, with the benefit of hindsight, you get to see a moment when paths diverged, a crucial choice you made that took you in one direction rather than another. Hello, Tracy. Thanks so much indeed for tuning in. Brilliant question. Alexis says, you'd be doing my job, you'd be kind of coming down and studying the ancient world. It's never too late. It's great that you're doing both. You're doing both, like kind of in that sense. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts. Brilliant indeed. Well done, Sarah. I'm loving the kind of chat that's coming through today on the Facebook Q&A. Thank you so much indeed for it all. But what would you do? What would be the road not travelled? What would be my road not travelled? Well, to be honest with you, it's a bit prosaic. I was for a long time going to be a lawyer. But before that, actually, when I was sort of 14, 15, I wanted to be a doctor. But I went into a hospital in the UK when I was 14, 15, and you could do sort of work experience placements for a day, half a day at that stage, sort of get a sense of whether you wanted to pick the A-levels that you needed to have to be able to go on and study medicine at university. And so I was thinking about, very keen to become a doctor, was interested in everything medical, loved blood, loved all the medical programs on television. And I went in for a day and the morning was all the theoretical stuff in terms of kind of, let's tackle this problem. How do we do that? What would the surgery be? What would the treatment be? I was loving it. I was all over it. I absolutely loved it. But then in the afternoon, we had to go and actually meet the patients. And I discovered that I didn't have a brilliant amount of patience with the patients. And I remember one lovely lady who I'm sure was put up to this. I was told to go and ask her about her history of diabetes. And I think she was told to be deliberately difficult, to really test us all as to whether we were kind of cut out for this kind of job. But she, for the next half an hour, told me about every aspect of her life and of her family and of her family's family life, except for her diabetes. And I couldn't get her to tell me anything about the topic that I was supposed to be getting her to talk to me about. And I ended up going, I can't do this. So I sort of decided after that stage that perhaps I wasn't best placed to be in a hospital. Karen, you would have been a librarian. Constantino would have been a priest. Wow, what an amazing set of roads not travelled. We've got to put this up on the Facebook page. Everyone do comment in with your road not travelled. What were the things that you have not gone on to do but could potentially have done at what point? So for me, it was could have been a doctor, could have been a lawyer. I never wanted to be an astronaut or anything like that. That really never kind of came to me, but kind of, I'll have a think about whether there were any others. My brother James, very kindly listening into this Q&A, is suggesting I explain who stood up for me when I was discussing career choices with mum and dad. Yes, there was a moment where I sort of turned to mum and dad and went, I'm thinking about reading classics. And James, my brother, who was kind of himself a fan of classics at the time, very much stood up for me in helping support me in making that choice. Although James, that sixth form geography, that sixth form classical civilization project that you did for A-level, it's still obviously my guiding research text in most things that I do. Karen, you took the path of international finance and banking after your BA, kind of in medieval studies. You should be grateful for that lady for putting you off medicine. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I just realised I still have a hankering for it occasionally. I really like the topic of ancient medicine, and of course now, when I became a doctor of classics, the joke was that as long as someone had been dead for a couple of thousand years, I was the best person to call, but not when they were in need in their life. But Tracy had a second question. We can fit this in just before we finish the half hour. Asking that, what, if anything, do you think future historians will find interesting about our lives today? So Tracy's been thinking about kind of how people engage with the past and what they learn from, and what they what speaks to us about the past. But her question is, so what do you think future historians will find interesting about our lives today? I think that's an incredibly good question. And I think on the one hand, doing history of now in the future will be an incredibly difficult task, partly because of the proliferation of sources and the survival of sources. Thinking about the ancient world, and thinking really about any period of the past, pre-20th century, and maybe even pre the internet, really, there is a finite limit to the amount of surviving source material that you can access, which actually makes consuming and thus understanding the world that you're studying feasible task. But now, of course, we have an almost limitless potentiality for survival of a limitless number of different viewpoints of people's perspectives. And on the one hand, obviously, that's going to help, because one of the things we struggle with in the ancient world is getting different perspectives on what went on in the ancient world and what life was like in the ancient world, particularly from non-traditional elite sources. Right? So there won't be that problem. But on the other hand, trying to come up with any kind of actually coordinated narrative around how to understand a particular period in the past is going to be an incredibly difficult one, to be able to see the wood for the trees, the individual trees, of all those different sources and viewpoints that the historian is going to want to take into consideration. And yes, the latest makes the point about believing everything that's on the internet, of course, also with the problem of fake news. But actually, is that something that's new to the world, or have people always been kind of putting out different viewpoints? And are we only, sometimes we can't but not make use of those in the past when we don't have many sources to be able to work with. But actually, are we going to get more savvy? I think we are. I think we are going to get more savvy about distinguishing potentially fake news. I think we're all going to have to do that in our own lives right now, let alone historians of the future looking at the past. But I think getting that coordinated narrative is going to be an extremely difficult one. And what will they find interesting about our lives today? I mean, I think people have started to talk about this in recent decades, obviously thinking about climate change and a certain amount that people are going to look back on us, particularly over the last 50 years, seeing us as sleepwalking into the disasters that await us in our planet. But equally, people have started talking about the Anthropocene as a new era, grand era in history. The Anthropocene is from the moment from when actually mankind, humanity, has started affecting his environment, our environment, and is the key kind of factor that is affecting what his own environment, or humanity's own environment, looks like. The Anthropocene, that is where we are now, and it's not necessarily a good thing. So I think kind of that will be a really interesting tipping point for histories of the future, thinking about when we as a human race tipped into being the main thing that was actually changing our world around us, and how we didn't realize that for a long time. But then even when we did, we sleepwalked for quite a while, and then hopefully there will be a chapter in this story when we wake up to it as well. We are well out of time. I'm so sorry for going on over our allotted half hour, but some absolutely brilliant questions have been coming in. So thank you so much indeed for sending in your questions. Keep them coming in to michaelscottacademic@gmail.com or through the Facebook page as well. We're going to be putting up some quizzes and votes for you on the Facebook page this week from the great questions this week. So kind of that's absolutely brilliant. Please do engage with those as well. And I will see you next time. So we are going to be meeting next time on the 24th of September. And as there was a vote for 4 o'clock, we'll go for 4 p.m. UK time on the 24th of September, so a little bit earlier. And until then, in the next couple of weeks, stay safe, stay well, look after yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again soon and chatting more. All the best.